Start with this first panel then. We would like it to be an open forum by Dr. René Millán Valenzuela, and I will read very briefly his resume. He is a researcher at the Social Studies faculty in Mexico City at the Autonomous University. He has worked during the past 15 years with regards to the well-being measurement, and he will open up the discussion so that we can continue with the forum. Thank you and welcome, Doctor. I would like to thank the officials at the State of Jalisco and the organizers of this committee for this very kind invitation to take part on this forum, and I am truly pleased to be part of this forum and specifically this panel, sharing it with specialists such as my colleagues are. So when we wonder why Mexicans feel so happy, we have many answers, and I have no idea why that is the answer, and I would like to know actually if somebody knows why we are happy. It's not important to always know the precise answer, but furthermore have a firm question, always a steady question, so that we know what it includes. Contradictory facts, for example, when we ask a question, when we formulate a question. And of course there's many situations that lead to the happiness or to the well-being. I will next show a group of data. It's not a presentation per se, but data that I would like to share with you so that we know how the variables are associated to the happiness and well-being of Mexicans. Not so much giving an answer as to why we are so happy. Maybe at the end of the panel we could recap on that. Next slide, please. We will try to cover these items on the slide. We will work on associations. We have subjective well-being, which is based on these 9 dominions, these 9 realms. It's an experience, the experience of your life, or the experience at your workplace. After that, I will work on a group or set of variables about the habitability, and I will talk about the household, the neighborhood, and the city. Then we will talk about a different set of variables regarding human development. I will do this very briefly because this is not the topic of this forum, but it's important to know how you can function, how you can be part of the society, how you can vote, go to the movies, have freedom. So these are opportunities granted to the society so that individuals can actually are rightful regarding this human development rights. And then we will talk about pro-social behavior. Finally, I will present a satisfaction model. And when I talk about life satisfaction, the variable will be explained based on that concept, not the happiness per se, but the life satisfaction. So subjective well-being has the happiness on the one hand and life satisfaction on the other hand. And I will focus on that life satisfaction. This is a seminar that we coordinate and carried out a program. Roberto and myself, Roberto was here yesterday and he talked about this as well. We have 300 cases and it's a 95% reliance, and the error margin is 2.8, plus minus 2.8. So it's a highly reliable source. This is some data. On average, this life satisfaction, when we have a rank from 1 to 10, is 8.5. So 1 out of 6 Mexicans, and that is 17.5%, is little or no satisfied with his life. Only 17% have declared themselves as non-satisfied or unhappy with regards to their life. And 46.7% of the population is within the 8 to 9 rank. So when we add that up to 35.6% of those that are highly satisfied, or state that are highly satisfied, will take us to an 82%. So that's very high. Many people, very happy people. 82% of the population are somewhere within satisfied and very satisfied. This is a paradox because our country does not have high levels in terms of development or infrastructure for that matter. We have high numbers when it comes to inequalities. However, we do notice that the satisfaction with life has a very high degree. When I talk about realms or dominions, I will base this on the family life. And this works pretty well when we talk about life satisfaction. The problem is that these dimensions add up a number of variables. When we talk about family life, we of course include many variables. So we suppose that the individual will evaluate said variables and turn a result or an outcome. So how do you feel from 0 to 10? 8, 9, I feel good, I feel okay. So we would like to segregate them. Segregation is important when we create public policies. So we will segregate these values and the answers. I will next talk about these next 10 values. I will talk about affective life, work, family life, economic situation, friends, health, the physical health, and then education, not effective education, but the level of education, and then social life and free time or leisure time. We will then have satisfaction with the affective life as well as a satisfaction with the life from an overall perspective. We see the variables that have higher weight are on the one hand affective life, that's number one, and number three family life, so the first and the third row. Those are the factors that most determine or have a higher weight when it comes to happiness related to the life satisfaction. We will have to segregate each factor, each dominion, and when we do that, we have very interesting results. Affective life, for instance, the factor that has the higher weight to determine satisfaction is the partner or the spouse and the affection. I'm not talking about the family life per se, but I am referring to the spouse or the partner. And the second factor has to do with the social parameter. So that will be the status or social level that one partner or one spouse provides the other with within the society. So that's important when it comes to affections or affection. It's important to notice that when we talk about stability and support or activities that they perform together or sexual life have very little weight when it comes to satisfaction. So this is important to always bear in mind. I will have a sip of water. One moment, please. As to work or the experience of working and the satisfaction that we get from our job, we have two variables that are the most important ones. That will be the type and the type of tasks and the responsibilities. This is first row, number one on this slide. So people are satisfied with the responsibilities or what they are accountable for, and when that is the case, they tend to be happier. The third column talks about probability. Maybe you can't read that. And the second one talks about relevance. So the closer to zero is more significant. This is a regression type of study. And if a person is happy, and in addition to that, he or she is happy with the responsibilities that have been given to him or her, we can increase that by 0.49%, as opposed to those that are not satisfied with what they carry out on a daily basis. And the second variable has to do with the income. So if the person is happy with the responsibility, and on top of that, he or she is very pleased with the income, we increase the likelihood to be happy by 0.6% when very satisfied men or women with the job. Of course, I will not detail all these charts, but I will next very briefly talk about the family life. The factor that is most important here has to do with affection and understanding that is well within the family, with a very high likelihood to increase life satisfaction, 0.68. 0.68 is very important when it comes to the relevance ratio. The second factor has to do with whether the family has mechanisms accepted from within the members of the family to solve conflicts. So that will be a well-implemented system to solve situations or conflicts, and that, in turn, increases the likelihood to be happy, 0.59% actually. But we have other considerations that are not being taken. There are other references that are not taken into consideration. For example, some affection or the status is more important for the partner or the spouse relationship as opposed to the family relationship. The next is the economics or the economic situation. So your own economic situation in comparison with your life satisfaction. The most important factor is the economic situation at which I am can allow me to have or to lead the life I wish, I want. So we are talking about expectations here. We're not talking about the income, making a lot of money, making little money. It's not the case. Here I'm talking about fulfilling the possibilities in the future and getting there, getting to where I am expecting. And secondly is expectations as presented by myself and by my children. The highest weight is on the first variable. That means that we have a high level of expectations, and that's important when it comes to economic evaluation. Even this is on top of the needs perceived by the children, or the needs that can be granted to the children. The next, and I will skip this one, I will go to friends. The relationship with friends. The most important variable is the frequency with which they gathered. And the second one has to do with support provided by the friends whenever in trouble. So whenever we receive support, that's a fraternal type of support, and then we declare ourselves as satisfied with life. I would like to know if I am explaining myself here. We need to understand variable number 5, the fact that we have reciprocal relationships with our friends, and this is important data. It's not important for satisfaction. The important thing here is to get the support. For example, go out, hang out. But it's not important to be reciprocal or to have equal basis when it comes to the friendship so that satisfaction can be given. This is normal throughout the Mexican society. I am doing well time-wise. So I will continue with the dominions, and this is the last two, the second to last realm. Once again, we talk about an important factor, but this is for health. We, for example, understand the collectiveness. As the collectiveness is important, but now we understand individual aspects as well. And health is based on the individual basis. People are satisfied with their health as long as they can live, of course, and they can live well. And by that, I mean that they lead a healthy life. That is on top of being independent, and being independent is an important value. And those values are on top of being able to take care of the family. That means that we as a society are starting to evaluate the own satisfaction and not so much being part of the collectiveness. So I regret to tell you that, but that is the case. We are moving towards that trend. Next, we have education. The satisfaction, hence the impact on life satisfaction, is guaranteed as long as the education level guarantees a good income. This variable, the relationship between education and income, is on top of the variable between education and vocation, or your call in life. So it's more important to have a better income than to develop yourself in the area that you prefer the most or where your real call is. Next, we have social life, and this means how we connect to others, how we relate to one another, for example, with friends, with colleagues at work, or with strangers for that matter. Social life is then measured with the frequency for getting out and hanging out and leisure time. And the third variable is the activity or activities that we carry out with the family, not with friends, but rather with the family members. Next. Free time or leisure time. The most important variables are having fun or having a good time and rest. Now the third one is watch TV. Watching TV is a family activity. So a great part of the society, as a matter of fact, as family cohesion, or social cohesion is based on strong linkage from a family perspective. So it's encapsulated, it's embedded into the family. That could be an important factor to explain happiness. We're talking about happiness that can be immediately attained while this parameter is being accomplished, the family context. If we take into consideration the most important variables of the 9 realms that we have considered, the variables, now we will focus on variables. Out of those 9 pillars, we will understand then that life satisfaction will be based on affective life, which is determined by the likelihood or possibility, 0.62, and affection to the significant another. Important and immediate values, the family and the significant another. It could be a spouse, a partner. And we have 2 additional values, living and feeling well while living, while actually living, not having pain, not suffering, so that we can function, we can operate. And education is also important. We could say that one person that is satisfied with his or her life, with his or her family life, and that is feeling healthy, and that the education level will provide him or her with a good income, will guarantee a happy Mexican. Now this is the time watch is going down, right? So I still have some minutes. Next, we will talk about habitability. The stopwatch is going down, and I have a couple of minutes, so I will continue with the variables. I will talk about the house, the neighborhood, and the city. I would like to share the variables that have the highest weight. The place I live at, my house, the place where I organize myself, where I live, where I spend my time. And the most important factors out of the 6 variables that we measure with regards to the household include closeness to the workplace and closeness to the areas where you can gather with friends or go out. Of course, they are important, but the most important one when it comes to the house is the social level, the visibility, the impact it has. What does my house say about me from a social perspective? So the social status. And the second variable has to do with affection, the emotional part of it, how much I like my house, to what extent I am fond of my house. And when these variables change, of course, the weight or the ponder also changes. We have a number of variables that are being studied, but of course the weight can be turned around. And I will explain myself in a minute. So I like my house. How much? To what extent do I like it? Well, that's fundamental, so that the level of satisfaction is increased. And to a certain extent, that has to do with the social status. Next slide, please. Next, I will skip this one. No, the previous one. I apologize. Next, let's talk about the neighborhood, the sector where you live in. When it comes to the neighborhood or the Foro, you have... This is a national survey. It's more important. We're talking about the neighborhood. How do people evaluate their satisfaction? The most important thing is the aspect, the visual aspect, the architectural design, the urban planning, how nice, how pleasant the neighborhood is. Secondly, the social environment and the people that live there. That would be the neighbors, the level of identity. How well or to what extent you identify yourself with the others within your neighborhood, so people feel identified. When you are in a poor sector, or if you're in a rich sector, in a wealthy sector, you identify yourself with the others, and that can lead to higher satisfaction. Now, the type of people you live with, the type of neighbors, that is. Now let's talk about the city. And the second variable is safety. And this is very different to what happens in the previous slide. We were talking about the neighborhood back then, and now we're talking about the city. Now, most of the Mexicans outside large-sized cities, for example, Guadalajara, which is now a very large city, do carry out activities that are part of the neighborhood, and people get to know what happens on their block or in the surroundings. Now, in the city is more important. The safety factor is more important. So it's important to get identified with the others, but also to feel safe. And the condition to, for example, commute from one place to another and to go out and have a good time would be important when analyzing the city. So this is highly valuable. Walk or drive around, and it's more important for the people that responded with regards to the city. And safety is second. It comes second when analyzing the city. Next slide. We will now talk about the two most important variables of the three realms I just analyzed. The most important variables, we will organize the information on this chart. The most important one is that I actually like my house. That's the most important one, that I am fond of my house. So when you go to the evaluation of a house, a neighborhood, or a city, the most important satisfaction comes or derives from the place where I live and the house where I live. And that can be proven with the high level of investment when it comes to urban design. We are about to wrap up. I will talk about variables that have to do with human development. We're talking about contextual variables that can allow us to function well within the society. Only two realms, freedom. When it comes to freedom, to what extent do we value being able to make decisions or having been able to make decisions? Is it important? Is it little important, highly important? So make decisions with freedom, important moments of our lives without any conditionings. We are the subject, we are the main actor of said decision, is a very high factor when it comes to satisfaction. It's not important whether the government listens to us or not, our opinion. It doesn't mean, it doesn't matter if my opinion is not taken into consideration to evaluate your own satisfaction. Roberto, correct me if I'm wrong, but almost 80% of the population say that their voice is not respected by the government. We're talking about the government or the public sector, the private sector. Our voice is not respected, and I'm within that 80%. That's the percentage that has been calculated. That's what people say. However, decisions can be made on a free structure. Next, I have variables that measure the efficacy, the efficiency of the government. For instance, the government implements the law. Well, the fact that the law is implemented or not does not modify satisfaction, and that's terrible. So that the law is enforced or it's not enforced, and people are satisfied in any case. Now we have a 0.57% regarding to the general evaluation of the government. All those that believe that the government is somehow doing a good job, that would increase the satisfaction slightly. For example, that paperwork is easy, that bureaucracy is helping you and not working against you, and so forth. But it's not a relevant factor. And finally, I will talk about the pro-social behavior. And this has to do with the Mexican mythology, whether it's true or not, that we have a great capacity to be solidarity. That solidarity that Mexicans have. So that's support and solidarity extended to the others. To what extent that satisfies our life? Well, helping our acquaintance economically has no effect whatsoever on our satisfaction. Now, providing emotional support doesn't have any satisfaction increase either. Now, give a donate like philanthropy, has no effect either The only one that has satisfaction effect is getting support from others. So we really like it when we get support from others, and that is connected to the levels of sociability that I mentioned. If you recall well, there's no reciprocity. We like to receive, but we don't like to give. And this is the last model I would like to share. We should take the 6 most important variables, including freedom, government, and all the realms we have talked about. What will make a Mexican very satisfied is, number 1, the freedom to make decisions, freedom to make a choice. That's the most important one for satisfaction. Secondly, secondly is health, live well and feel well. So that's the sensation. It's not objectiveness, it's subjectiveness when it comes to I want to feel good despite the fact that I might be sick. Then we have family life, affective life, and then habitability, how much I like my house or the place I live in. And then we have education that can lead to good income. And finally, we have government, the evaluation of the government. So freedom, feel well, affection on a family environment, and also intrafamily, the house, education, and government. So these are the 6 variables that would highly determine, based on our survey, why Mexicans are satisfied. Final considerations. Well, subjective well-being, or life satisfaction, or happiness, has a specificity, and it cannot be deducted from other considerations, such as income, because income is only for another type of well-being. It cannot be deducted, or we cannot deduct that if you have a good income, you have well-being. It's not a given factor. Then we talk about how some of these dominions are connected to human development factors. We have facilitators of the experiences that happened in the past. That's the human development. Now, third, Mexicans, such as the rest of the world, present different criteria evaluations based on their own experiences, depending on the areas where they are expertise. For example, when I evaluate my partner or my spouse, I determine whether or not I am satisfied with myself. When I evaluate my house, there's a different criteria, so that I can say if I am satisfied or not. When I evaluate my job, there's a different criteria. It has nothing to do with my health or my house to evaluate whether or not I am satisfied with life. And this is what makes sense on this apparent paradox. That is the fact. We have differentiated criteria depending on which dominion I am trying to explain. Finally, we have the freedom variable that supposes that satisfaction, life satisfaction, is connected. And this is highly noticeable. I think it's a finding, an important finding of this research, that this freedom variable is connected to the likelihood of having your own biographic pathway, the one that you desire, the one that you expect. So, if this is true, the subjective well-being should include, amongst other things, the usefulness of understanding that Mexicans, or any other population for that matter, on an individual basis, are building upon their own biographic pathway or roadmap. They are working on their project of life. Actually, this is what freedom is all about. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Millán. It seems this table is working. We are now hearing why, the reasons why Mexicans are so happy. The Mexican prototype, happy with their families, happy with their personal relations, people who are satisfied about their own health, that match their expectations in terms of economy and education. That would be the prototype for happy Mexican people. And now it is the turn for Beatriz Yasuko Arit, and I will read briefly about her resume. Dr. Beatriz Yasuko, she's a researcher from the Autonomous University in Sinaloa, and her research is on quality of life in Mexico, subjective well-being, and sustainable development. She's the author of many articles on capacities and subjective well-being as a way of measuring quality of life. Doctor? Good morning, and I want to thank, first of all, the government of Jalisco. I want to thank you for your warmth, for the hospitality you have shown to all of us. So I come here to present to you an experience of work from the University of Sinaloa. We have been working with this for more than 10 years, and I am going to try to brief this for these 20 minutes that I have to speak with you. The question is why we Mexicans are happy. And I would say that in general, population in general, humans in general, we have an emotional balance that relates to our everyday life. So when something happens to us, we're always going to try to find balance. If something negative could occur to us, we mentally will try to find the positive side of it. And there are cognitive theories that tell us about finding balance. And this we are able to see on our daily life with no matter what example we got. If they had stolen my purse, and right now I would say, well, I was not harmed. Nobody harmed me. And the next day I will continue to work, but throughout the day I will think, oh, it is a pity they stole my purse, and I had this and I had that and I had to do this. But we are going to balance this misfortune. But what's happening to Mexico? In psychology theory, we have found that with collectivist theories, it is significant to consider happiness in the kinds of countries like this. Mexico is this type of country, but the data I will present only relates to Sinaloa. So I will talk about objective and subjective measures of quality of life. So a little background on what we're working. And the well-being of people sustains the objectives of public policies aimed to improve social development of the people. This is framed by that which conditions life favoring individuals in society. That is to say, material conditions. And this study relates to a field with whose objective is provoking good life, but also the subjective relates to how people feel they are, subjectively how people feel about their own well-being, and of course it changes according to the person. And here we have that last century policies and welfare defines welfare in regards to social assistance, where primary needs have to be covered. So this tells us about level of life, and we continue to talk about level of life. But by the 60s, last century, we were advancing to a more democratic society. So now this includes more things related to post-modernization with change of values. All societies are undergoing value change, but always keeping the well-being of the people as a core. And also now something that has changed is considering from physical security, now we go to the expression of life, from welfare to well-being. Now, what do we get happiness into all this? The most advanced societies are changing priorities, always aiming to attain good quality of life, and these priorities have become the core of this post-modernization process. This is important now when dying out from starvation would be a need to cover, but then it becomes so significant. Here in Mexico, we have places that have very high quality of life, but other places are at extreme poverty. So for most of the people, security refers, or it is no longer as synonymous of happiness. Why? That's because we expect more than life, more than simply not dying out of starvation. And this income we get, we expect, can provide more quality of life. So in this sense, the bottom part, these expectations relate to something more qualitative, where subjectivity is basic, and that is to say how life is perceived by the subjects. And then by this we get into the matter of this presentation. From people's perception, in the case of the state of Sinaloa, we started by the city of Culiacan, and we applied a survey to 2,000 informants with a sampling and representing specifically this city of Culiacan. So, this is something we have seen earlier, and now I will just talk about Sedesol levels of poverty, patrimony, and capacities. These are from previous administrations because some of the charts I will present were worked under this perspective that Sedesol provided by the government. And Sedesol used to define or defined social development as a permanent process by which capacities and options get widened. Both capacities and options increase to people. But in this case, it is important to mention people as the core of all this, and being able to perform under rights and options. So this always to cover needs, but aspirations are included. What aspiration we have in life, what we can obtain, what are our interests, what convictions we have, and what are the specific needs to each individual. And I underline aspirations, interest, needs chosen by the people, specifically chosen. And in this study that included 2,000 cases, we kept 1,181. And if we observe this chart, first we have conditions of life, then we have capacity, and then we have subjective well-being. And this comes from a model that we prepared, and on the basis of trying testing, we know that income and subjective well-being don't correlate with accuracy, but as mediators we have education from the objective standpoint. Income and education correlates to income. The larger the income, the more education people get, and in terms of improving capacity as well as being indicators. In this we can have both subjective and objective indicators of well-being. And I want to enhance the aspect of believing in one's capacities. We know that capacities will bring income, health, and education. In the case of our model, we included believing in our capacities. It has to do with how capable people feel to live life. So this is the core of this part. And as I model the factorial and confirmatory model, we prepare this model where satisfaction coming from social support is the main factor that appear in this factorial analysis. It got to be placed by the core of this diagram. On both sides we get satisfaction on the place they live at, Culiacan, or personal security and the place where they live, and also the belief or trust in one's capacities. And this is by the middle. This is the variable or factor, mediating factor that includes income level and education level. And here we have that from the results that we were able to obtain through these 2,000 informants we surveyed. We have psychological well-being in the first column, trusting or believing one's capacity, satisfaction of life, and happiness and sense of life. If we consider the average, the median, we can see that education level gives us a trend to increase psychological well-being as education level increases. Those people who have no studies, and here we can see the percentages that also with people who have graduate studies, and evaluation goes from 30 to 60. Maximum level would be 60, and here we have 41.3. And in terms of believing in one's capacity, it goes from 34.5 up to 54.7. This is the highest. Trusting in one's capacities is very important. And in terms of results of life and how they are assessed in terms of satisfaction and happiness, satisfaction, the media goes from 7.9 to 9, and there's a scale of evaluation from 0 to 10, and the sensed happiness goes to here we can see the data. So there is a relation to education with all this, and here we have those the assessments that didn't pass. We sometimes think that satisfaction level is high in Mexico and we're always above 8, but that's an average that we're told. But what happens when we truly go to make direct studies under different life situations, and we analyze what happens with those people who feel unsatisfied? And this is what I present in this table. So according to the level of education, the first square here, we have the level of education. Elementary school, 14.4 feel satisfied, 7.4 feel unhappy. With junior high school, 9.1, 4.1. Those who studied high school, 4 and 2. And if we get to see this compared to minimum wages, from 1 to 5 minimum wages, we can see that unsatisfaction is higher, 18% with minimum wage, up to getting to 10.5 with people who have 2 salaries, 4 salaries, 5 salaries. Nobody said they were fully unsatisfied. They were people who had larger wages than 5 minimum wages. And in terms of non-happiness, of course, we had less percentage here. Happiness is different. Satisfaction of life we evaluate through achievements. If I tell you to assess yourselves in terms of satisfaction, you are going to think about things that have happened in your life. But in terms of happiness, happiness is a little more emotional. It has much more emotional load, and it is a state of mood, and it will depend on the moment everyone's living. And this, at the right, we have the correlation that came out from all the variables we managed. And don't think they were so many. They were 24, but these were selected based on many trials that have been done through many years and according to what people considered. So the ones that had significant correlations were being able to work, and it correlates to happiness as well as satisfaction for life according to education level. So satisfaction of life depends to the education level. And this didn't correlate to subjective well-being, and this has occurred in almost all our research. So 52.3 of families who make 5 minimum wages that provided data about unsatisfied, and it is high. It is 52.3 and 26.2 feel unhappy. So we are not considering what's happening, but the threshold, it is important to say that unsatisfaction level is by these 5 minimum wages for Culiacan in 2004. Currently, this has varied. Current data would be different, but there was the threshold back then. I remember Mariano Rojas' research in Puebla and the area surrounding Mexico City, and a threshold income where satisfaction for life crumbles, and it was a research in the same year. It was 3 minimum wages. So that is to say that in Sinaloa, the income level has a different connotation. Making minimum wages is or belongs to minimum wages are for those works that are those jobs that are probably being clerk in a store or something like that. But services, providing services to minimum wages, people don't accept to minimum wages to work providing service. And capacity or trusting one's capacity. We studied habitat urban areas with poverty. We can see 310 cases. By the middle column, Las Coloradas is another neighborhood that has created recently. And it's been there for 8 years probably. And we have income is less than 5,000 pesos a month, and we can see how in 89.1% and 86% in both samples for Las Coloradas we made a census of everything of every house. And in terms of education, they have 28% have more than high school, only 28% at Habitat and 15% at Las Coloradas. And I want to enhance here perception of capacity, very low in these poverty polygons. In terms of security, perceived security, this is very important because we know about security mostly back then, 2004, and from 2005 on, security has become a priority. And in regards to our studies, something very important has been security. The other one was social support. So in terms of security, variables that have been managed are satisfaction based on achievements, how secure people feel, how much related to their community they feel, security into their future, and relative capacities according to their safety, how capable they feel that they can control their safety and security. So for future security, in satisfaction lower than 6, that means it was not passing. It was 11.2 for higher income levels. It was higher in satisfaction in the middle class, 9.3, lower income level, 9.3, but very, very low income level, 23% people declare they feel insecure about their future. Now, in terms of relative security, the lowest income level presented high levels, 21%. And now to finish, I just want to say, and this comes in the document that was presented for this event, and this is going to be published later on. I want to tell you that for what we have been working with, what we are trying to find is what vision of life people have. This has to do with every individual's idea and what refers to each person and to the cultural aspects. And this is something that we manage in terms of identity. EMIC. EMIC means the own, and this acronym means the culture and the own. So from psychology, we're trying to coin the concept of EMIC psychologic. And this is the vision that every person has about their own lives, and it has to do with subjectivity, conditions of life, and all these characteristics through the categories of society, culture, group, and person. And from the subjective, this is very, very interesting, very basic for this session, is what refers to essential needs from the person themselves, what are their essential needs, and also what customs and traditions represent to everybody's life, and also beliefs and results of life that relates to subjective well-being, satisfaction for life, and sensed happiness, everything that relates to every person's life. Well, it seems we found more answers. This is a study for Culiacan, but it could be the same for any other Mexican city. It could be that social support, social networking works matters, and also education explains why people are happy. But now you bring one more element: the perception of one's capacities, how we perceive ourselves, if we can make it in life. And this is also important to life. So now it is a turn to Jesus Arroyo Alejandre. Dr. Alejandro is our own speaker from this city, and we are very happy to have him here. I'm going to read briefly about his resume. Dr. Arroyo Alejandro is Director of Economy and Society of the University of Guadalajara, researcher of INESEL Regional Studies Center, and he's a specialist in economy, urbanism, migration, and subjective well-being. Doctor, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. I want to thank also the organizers of this forum, as well as the government of this state. And I'm glad to be able to present to you the results of studies that we performed at the University of Guadalajara with the support of the government about subjective well-being in Jalisco and regions inside Jalisco. I will try to tell you about this scheme. The first two items very quickly. I think it is important to consider the neoclassic perspective about satisfaction with the consumption of goods and services, how it relates to subjective well-being, and how this neoclassic theory has supported since Adam Smith the economic growth we have in a system of market and trade that we are living under capitalism and non-capitalism with China, something that has brought us to the limits of our growth. And in this context, I will present to you the results of this study we made in Jalisco in 2011. So here I am pointing out in the previous chart presupposition that is very basic for those who know about economic theory, but it says, and both the previous slide and this say that we always have functional satisfaction when we consume goods and services, and satisfaction will increase if we increase consumption. Marginal increases in consumption of goods goes down, is decreasing. So if we continue to consume, we might find non-satisfaction or negative satisfaction. So in order to find balance and maximize satisfaction according to this theory, it is necessary that we increase the usefulness or the satisfaction that match every peso we spend on the goods and services we consume. So this means that in order to continue to increase satisfaction, we would need to find more or new goods and services, and we also need more money. Otherwise, either we get money or we fall in debt. So through as it has been said, through our income, we are encouraging goods to be produced, to produce more and new goods. And someone says that this is like riding a tiger, and we're growing on a continuous basis. This becomes a circle of growth, but we are reaching the top. And this is what I want to tell about with my next slide, in the next part of my presentation. So there are limits in terms of economic growth, and these limits are determined by the use of natural resources and the use of factors. And now we get into what Hardin calls the tragedy of the commoners, of the commons. And what does this mean? This means that if we rely on resources that are everybody's resources, then there is this trend in our system to deplete deplete these resources very quickly. He sets the example of a community, but now we are living a global community, and globally we are undergoing this paradigm, and we have reached the limits of growth as established by Meadows Group. So I am going to propose or to explain or to present to you one of Meadows' chart that started collaborating with this during the 70s with a Roma club who have studied the limits of growth. And their question was, are they limits to growth? Of course they are, but they didn't listen to this back then. So now Meadows in 2009, as well as another group of academicians, are proving through a set of information, of data that I will not describe, but here we can see the trends of industrial production and natural resources going down, food going down, production increasing, population increasing, pollution increasing, and so on. So just to brief all this, I need to say that Meadows and his group suggest that sustainable development could be attainable or could have been attained by the middle of the 1980s, and it hasn't been. So sustainable development requires lots of effort, and it's going to be more difficult now, even more difficult now. So limits of growth have been reached due to the market economy supported by the neoclassic economy theory, and now it is important to contemplate prevention, mitigation, resilience due to this depletion, but also due to climate change. So subjective well-being or happiness are different. They are different from the satisfaction of the neoclassic economic theory. So what we are trying to make with this study truly proves the paradox that to a certain level of consumption of goods and services, subjective well-being might decline, and this is the Stirling's paradox. So, in order to describe the study we made in Jalisco, we took a sample of 4,883 people from 15 to 65 years of age. This is representative of the 12 regions inside Jalisco, and we applied a questionnaire that was the same that was applied in Bhutan, but then it was very wide. It was adapted to Victoria, Canada, and then we readapted to Jalisco. We included appropriate variables appropriate to our context in such a way that we were able to take a definition of the dominions of subjective well-being or happiness, and many of them have been treated, and we find this in literature, but we included security and safety because these are important to our context. Here we have these dominions: sensation of well-being, comfort with life base, satisfaction with employment, community life, social and family support, psychological well-being, financial security, culture and education, trust in the government and satisfaction, interest on the environment, perception about security. Each of these dominions has a set of questions. A set of questions for each dominion where we were able to take indicators about the dimensions of subjective well-being, providing to each a value for each region within Jalisco and for Jalisco as a state. So some outcome, you will find the full report on our website, on the website of the Planning Ministry, and here I will show some results. Well-being, subjective well-being, it is very interesting that by the north of the coast is the highest. The darker area are those places with a few population, little environmental deterioration, beautiful places, tourist areas, and so on. So the lowest is the central area, metropolitan area in Guadalajara and the surrounding area. Surrounding to the city, that 65% of population inhabits the Jalisco's center, and it has the highest level of income and development compared to or measured by conventional levels. The same as the north and the Altos area, the highlands, they have a low social economic development and low well-being indexes. If we go to the next, here we have a comparison of the well-being index in the regions compared to different countries, but also compared to the Happy Planet Index version 2.
When we consider this happy planet or happy world, we understand that there's a number of considerations. Costa Rica, for instance, is number one here, but we need to understand the environmental conditions. So we have the footprint, the ecological footprint, and that, of course, has been pondered as well. This is what we do on a region-to-region basis. We calculate the footprint so that we can have the same Happy Planet Index, so that we can comply with the same characteristics. So we have Jalisco as a state that is not that low when compared to other regions, but the Western Rocky Range and other areas are in a very good position, given that there's very little footprint. The central part, however, is below Jalisco. This is an interesting type of analysis. Next, we have the dominions for life or subjective well-being, and this is for Jalisco. I mentioned this before. I mentioned these indexes before. The lines are part of the central part, and Jalisco from an overall perspective. It starts from 0 all the way to 10, which is the maximum level. It's interesting to understand that both the regional sectors and the central part have a very high value in terms of social, family, and solidarity, consistent with what Professor Milan said. This morning, we have high numbers, but the low level of satisfaction has to do with the government, especially in the central part. And when I say central part, I mean to the metropolitan area of Guadalajara, but in other regions we also notice that. And it's important to notice that there's a trust index, or the reliability index for entities and officials and authorities is lower towards the central part. The highest part is, or the highest ranking is for culture and the Ministry of Education, and we find the economic ranking high, and that's surprising. And this also happens in Guadalajara and other areas, and it has to do, or is highly connected to the high values of subjective well-being, not only in Mexico but in Latin America. Next, we have solidarity, which has already been graphed out with high numbers. There's subjective well-being at high ranks as well. The northern region, the southern region, and the western mountain range, but not in the central part where more population is concentrated. Next, we have government satisfaction with very low levels throughout the regions. And this is interesting, especially when we focus on the central part, very low levels. And this is 2011. The southern shore, or the southern coastline, has low numbers as well. And this is divided by gender or type. This is divided by gender. So there's no significant difference or relevant difference. Next, we have the rhythm of life and the comfort, and that has to do with urban planning and the cities, how well you feel within the city, transportation, and many other aspects. Now, the central part has the lowest level, and 50% of the regions indicate that women are more stressed out, or they declare higher stress when it comes to the life rhythm or the way their lives are conducted. Next, we have the perception index for security or security factors, and this is highly connected to well-being. Of course, the regions that have higher numbers is high, and the only exception, well, it's a high throughout the region, but only on the northern shore or coastline is where we noticed very low or somehow low perception. Next, we have satisfaction index regarding the job place or the workplace in relationship with the family. It's interesting to understand when analyzing this graph that high incomes mean that the number will be duplicated. So it's a twofold difference when it comes to higher income. This is pretty consistent when I compare this to the Sterling paradox. No, I would like to go back to this is a workplace. The central part is the lowest in terms of satisfaction. Less satisfaction when higher income. And the next one is similar as well. There's very little perception as to how the curves are being bent over when there's a higher income in connection to the well-being. Next, we have the well-being and satisfaction with the environment. And this has to do with the level of scholar background or educational background. The higher the education, there's more perception as to how deteriorated the environment is. And this is determined by the general satisfaction level. This information is the Mikalos information modified by Jesus Garcia. And this is a two-entry type of survey with positive or negative perceptions in relationship to the life conditions. These are objective. First, we will analyze objective. So 29% in the state of Jalisco represents those that are in the real hell. You might remember yesterday we talked about hell and heaven. Well, this is the area where they are located. This 29% of the people are located with very low esteem or low appreciation regarding life. This is the subjective well-being as reported by the people. And the other regions have very similar numbers. And of course, if you add up the numbers, you will not get a 100 because we are just using for the effects of this study the extremes. Now, if we go to the central part, there's 52% of the people that are on that real hell that we have mentioned before. So negative or adverse perceptions and poor life conditions. I will not continue to detail this analysis, but when you go to the valleys or the valles region, it's up in the valleys of the state of Jalisco, you have numbers that are very similar as well. Next, we have inequality, which is inherent to the market-based system we have, and the data shows that's the case. We have correlations. We have the Gini index that we know for a fact that the closer to zero, the more unequal it is, and we then correlated it with the subjective well-being index, and this is the negative correlation, 0.48. That's pretty high. So the higher the inequality, the less subjective benefit is reported, of course. So we have general considerations or overall considerations. I would not like to say that these are conclusions, but just for the matter of this talk, this study is based on the subjective well-being that doesn't necessarily have to do with the income or other factors. For instance, cities have less satisfaction, and women within the 35 to 45 age range have low satisfaction levels, especially in the cities. And the list is very extensive. I will not detail all. But I do want to ask this question. This is an interesting one by Professor Thomas Friedman. And it states that now we have to move forward towards the frontiers of analysis. We have to go one step ahead, the analysis based on our economic crisis, and ask a question, a radical question. What would happen if the 2008 crisis represented more than a recession? What if this growth model created over the past 50 years telling us that the economy is unsustainable from an economic and ecologically perspective. And in the year 2008, we hit the road. We hit the wall. And that's when Mother Nature and the market said, no more. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Arroyo. This 2011 study or survey is one of the precursors of the well-being index for Jalisco, and Dr. Arroyo led this survey with another colleague that is also sitting in the audience today. So this Jalisco State survey is consistent with other results. So the family and the friends, the social affection, and also solidarity are so important. Now the higher subjective well-being is greater on the shore, so life is better when you're right by the sea. And there's a song, a Mexican folkloric song that says precisely that, and the numbers also indicate that. Now, furthermore, we in the state of Jalisco are objectively wrong but feel well, or we are objectively well but we feel bad. So we are always in contradiction. In spite of having higher numbers at the city or inside the metropolitan area, we have precarious conditions of those people that are in the real hell. Of the numbers that we heard during the presentation clearly state that. Next we have Herberto Rodriguez, and I would like to read his resume. He's a candidate for a doctorate by the Barcelona University, and he was vice president of the Coparmex and vice rector or vice dean of the Puebla University. He is currently vice dean or vice rector at that same university. Thank you, Herberto. Thank you, everybody. I would like to have a laser pointer. Well, first and foremost, my appreciation to the state of Jalisco, because one state that is focused on the happiness of its citizens, well, it's the first step, and a very good step, I might add. I am pleased to share the panel with distinguished colleagues, and when we talk about well-being and answering the challenge ahead of us, or trying to respond to this challenge, well, it's a great deal. Why? Then the well-being of Mexicans is so important for happiness, is important. Why are Mexicans part of this study so happy? That's the question of my presentation. Somebody once said that everything we need to know to be happy was learned during my kindergarten stage. And this is a quote, but I truly believe that's a fact. You respect the other one. You never borrow things that are not lent to you. You always apologize when you hurt somebody in any way. So those are the grandmother teaching, and that's important. During kindergarten, we also learned that. So why go into a PhD? What is if with my kindergarten I can be happy? Why go on and take it all the way to the PhD? I am not saying that being ignorant doesn't let you be happy, but we have to understand that a couple of years ago we started hearing from this neoclassic paradigm, and these scholars based on the human capital concepts. Schulz, Gary Becker, and other very important economists during the last century that always recommended an investment had to be made on education, because the education, of course, generates progress, and progress is desired by everybody, and this is quite rational. So where are we at? Why don't we focus on kindergarten and stay there, keep it there? Well, because we understand that when being educated or trained, we have skills and abilities, we have higher productivity, we can have a good job, we can have a good income. The income will give us a good acquisition power or consumption, and then we have happiness at the end. So consumption means happiness, education means productivity, and then we put all these concepts together, and we now try to understand why we are so embedded in this model. We need to understand why. So universities generates or creates young students that can be surveyed later on. For example, this is a web net or a web survey that includes questions that were asked to the alumni. So these are recently graduated students, and the question has to do with how they felt when they started their professional career and how they felt when they graduated. For example, working under pressure, coordinating tasks, teamwork, and become authoritarian or be the authority of a certain group and have a voice, and other aspects. So these students are a market product, because we are in a human capital paradigm, and we have to mention this. All those that work and all those that study and do a good job, of course, can make money. So this is what we are acquainted with. But we have been around with the same paradigm for 225 years since Adam. We have Miguel Videgaray, who is the Ministry of Economics here in Mexico, well, the Treasury. He's the head of the Treasury, and that's why the audience laughed. But in any case, he's a graduate from MIT. And that's a great achievement. But in any case, Luis Videgaray did not learn over the past 225 years what should be learned over kindergarten, because Luis Videgaray recently said that there's a fiscal law, and this fiscal reform, and the fiscal reform is taking away what's not yours. And he should have learned that back in kindergarten. Anyhow, you have to, of course, ask for forgiveness whenever you hurt somebody. Now, he has a PhD from the MIT, but his kindergarten was somehow lost. He skipped it. Anyway, this effect of human capital has reverted against the economists. And we understand now an important factor mentioned by one professor at Harvard. He said that when he started his career, one professor told him that if he was going to be an excellent or a magnificent economist, he would be part of the university schools. Or maybe you can make 100,000 years on a yearly basis, or 200,000 years on a yearly basis. But if you're a terrible or a lousy economist, you can go to Wall Street and you can make millions. Why is this relevant? Well, because when we talk about human capital, we can translate that into the fact that economists are working on different arenas, or maybe they are not following the neoclassic thoughts, thoughts or mindsets. They are following on their own track. So we are all investing on time and money, and this is an economic logic. Of course, the rational decision as to which career to pursue or what university to enroll at will be based on consumption, of course, and market oriented. And of course, we understand that there's a vocational call. We know that, and people run away from mathematics. Well, that's the tradition. However, we now know that a philosopher in Mexico makes somewhere around 10,000 pesos on a monthly basis. That's like $800 per that aeronautical engineer, or an engineer in aeronautics is now making so much more. So if Aristotle had been born in this era, and given that he was intelligent, he was always looking for happiness, and he lived in the consumption area, he might be that type of engineer in the aerospace era, and maybe his designs would be better than the ones that we now have with the seats so close to one another. And now we have Nietzsche and other philosophers. What would happen if they were living now, today? They would have it harder. It would be harder for them to understand what was going on and to adapt their ideas. Now, we talk about competencies, and this was a study carried out or performed on different graduate students. We have 3 private schools and 5 public schools, private and public graduates. So after a couple of years, we should ask questions. Did your profession improve your professional perspectives? Did your career improve your professional perspectives? Well, there's a group that said yes, indeed, it was improved. And some others say that it's a gratifying experience, the sole fact of going or attending a university. We are talking about 85 to 90% of satisfaction when attending university. However, when they actually get to the workplace, this diminishes dramatically. All those that are not satisfied at all or slightly satisfied are a majority, as opposed to those that are highly satisfied with their professional studies. And then we ask whether they are satisfied at their current job position, and we are understanding now that a higher percentage is certainly high percentage is satisfied, but the remainder is not satisfied. So, in order not to be unhappy, you should not create expectations. But the human capital paradigm and everything we have taught at universities has to do with studying a good career or a major and invest your time so that you will be happy the rest of your life. That's the paradigm that we have taught for many years now. In order to respond accurately to this question, and one advantage that Schutz didn't have, Mintz or Becker, who recently passed away, we now know, and with the computers, high-speed computers and the X data, as well as databases that we have at Imagina Mexico, with over 26,000 observations, and Ivan will talk about that more in detail during his presentation, led to a series of questions. In order to respond to one question, let's see to what level education is contributing to life satisfaction. So firstly, we need to understand that under the traditional paradigm, there's an indirect effect through income. And based on those parameters, right in the middle, we understand now that incomes, or the income of any individual, has an important effect when it comes to health and economics, with high relevance, especially given that these are statistically relevant numbers. I will not go much in detail into this health, economics, occupational, family, friendship, time, spirituality, and the neighborhood. These are factors that were analyzed. I will prefer to explain this. Let's not talk about education based on income. Instead of that, let's ask about the educational background with a direct impact on your life. So these regressions were with the income under control and modifying somehow the variables. So in the past we had 0.21 and now it's 0.13, such as the case of the family, but the health, economics, education, and friendships increase dramatically. That means that when you go to school, you elevate your educational level. You also have a higher level of freedom. You can connect to others more easily. I think that yesterday's presentation made by Helliwell and Bruno Fay, they are PhDs, so they can talk to one another, and they really had a great debate, and afterwards they just shook hands and they went out to grab a bite, so they are still friends. So the level of education these two characters have is precisely what I am referring to. These people are professionals, and hence when you study up to that level, you take better care of your health, you have better connection with other people, you can have freedom of opinion. And I will skip this slide. And when I talk about education, And when I see education based on income, numbers are different. I would like to thank Mariano Rojas, who loves data and numbers. I would like to thank him for his support. He really helped me with the numbers here. Now, this type of information might be part of the most relevant concept. We have to go beyond the human capital. Of course, these theories are pretty good, and they explain quite extensively what the human development is all about. But over the past years, we are hitting a wall. We are actually hitting a wall, and hence I reflect on that. There's an indirect effect, for example, the educational level, and the connection to the satisfaction and the workplace. We need, however, to understand, in order to work on the public policies, that education per se, regardless of the income, has an impact on your life. So people that go to school, go to college, the higher the education, the higher satisfaction they attain. I believe that we have additional topics on the agenda. I would like everybody to consider this as takeaways. When we talk about human capital, we should use competencies and also include soft competencies. This is the Luis Videgaray's webcast. So we have empathy, 0, gratitude, 1, consciousness or awareness. So he's a public servant. He's a ministry of the treasury. So at the end of the day, politics, of course, should be based on service and prudence. And we do expect that our governors are virtuous, or the most virtuous individuals, and that we can have these potentialized aspects as part of their character. But we have even had wine tastes. And during a wine taste, it's a shallow or bluff type of activity, but what we are doing during a wine taste is have culture, and or the culture spread to others, and we have to take that. So culture is what you still have once you have forgotten anything else. We know when somebody has a level of culture and when a person doesn't. That's why it's so important to measure all these factors. It's important, and it's very hard to find a way to measure courtesy and empathy, but we have a program in place that measures this type of characters, and politicians, of course, make the worst outcomes. For example, they are given a set of games, and there's a statistical possibility that is a 50-50. For example, when you toss a coin to the air, and economists always report 60s and 70% of, for example, they have head and tails, and for example, there's a 50-50 chance, of course, but I don't know why economists always make different numbers. Anyhow, the paradigm of education enlarges the satisfaction through all this concept. This is a multidisciplinary approach for economists, socialists, and people that are connected to education. And Martha Nussmann said that humanities are not good for profit, but for something way more valuable, and that is to create a world in which it's worth living. There are some interesting exercises. Dr. Paoli with Ms. Bargan have embarked upon activities with this type of exercises in Chiapas, in the state of Chiapas, in the southern region of Mexico. This is a regression model, so that you know that I know what I'm talking about. But in general, we're talking about the young people that have the the core values understood as part of the curricula, can be happier, have the possibility, or are more likely to control their lives and their dominions within their lives. It's important, it's interesting to get involved with this type of studies. For example, education with values. This is an edge that has not been yet exploited properly. I am about to conclude, but I need to mention that Mexico has an urgency, given that over the past years we have young people graduating from junior high school and high school entering college. And in a 10-year time frame, we need to have a different build-up of this young generation. these people that are graduating from high school and college will be a unique opportunity. We need to focus on those 10 years. So this graph clearly expresses that. This is the demographic bonus. It will go down dramatically after that period, and anything that has been said about the Mexican moment, of course, we have to focus on the Mexican demographics, but it will, instead of the Mexican moment, it will be turned into the Mexican instant. So we have to be very careful about that, about the demographics, and we have to contribute to a better world, in this case to a better Mexico, and starting from there. I am about to conclude with the last slide. This is a conclusion. Of course, education, the education level matters because people matter, not because of the profits they can make or the incomes they can make. We need to plant the seed of values, otherwise we will turn out to be Mr. Videgaray. Now we have to start with teachers and professors. We know that there is a problem. Nobody should deny the family what the responsibility is when it comes to educating their children. We need them to expand their options. For example, they have to take different classes. They have to take piano lessons. They have to take flute lessons, and they have to take wine. And I'm just playing with the words here. We have to support educational levels. We need to understand that every student is an individual. Last slide, which is a reflection. Do not forget that money is the most important thing, but it's important only when we don't have any money. If you want to get it all the way to the PhD, well, here in Mexico, PhD have the lowest unemployment rate. There's a great demand because of this demographic bonus that I talked about, and there has to be spaces opened up to almost 1 million kids and the young generation that will be graduating from college. So majoring and getting the PhD is important, so that you dedicate your life to whatever you want. And this is precisely what I do what I like the most. Thank you.
Thank you, Alberto. So studying education from a different perspective, right? Taking it out from normal regressions in order to get to see that higher or more education can produce more capacities in people, and capacities allow us to live better and enjoy other ways of subjective well-being. So, now it is a turn to Ivan Martinez. Ivan Martinez's turn, and I'm going to allow myself to read a little about his resume. Ivan Martinez has a major degree in economy from the University of Las Americas in Puebla and political science from the Colegio de Mexico, and is also a candidate to professor at ITAM. He has written books, Measurement in Research and Incorporation to Public Policies, Subjective Well-Being. This was published in 2012, and he has contributed to happiness research in Latin America, and he also participated coordinating the book on measuring progress and well-being. Good morning, everyone. I want to start also by saying I thank the organizers of this event. Thank you, David. Jose Luis, I also want to thank you for your hospitality, and also I add myself to all the congratulations here. And I work in a civic association that is called Imagina Mexico, Imagine Mexico, and our generation is creating well-being and subjective well-being of Mexicans in order to make use of this, and this is a basis that will allow us to improve well-being. Next. And let's say that somebody, I think Esteban yesterday was telling us about the importance of having clear goals when we talk about subjective well-being. First, in order to get to see what is being measured, and then to get to see how to research that. I don't know how accurate or appropriate or polemic a definition of subjective well-being could be, but this is what we understand as a subjective well-being at Imagina Mexico. And I think it matches with many things that have been presented here. It is a focus or approach that conceives well-being as that experienced by individuals, and studies about based on what people report. It has to do with life in general, specific areas of life, experience, affections, and the degree they consider their lives on the right path. If we break down this definition or this way of understanding well-being, we get to see that very clearly it has a cognitive load, very strong, as well as emotional, mostly emotional. Next, please. And on world ranks about happiness, and I will take only two examples, Mexico is ranked very well, as David told us by the beginning of this panel. Here we have in the World Happiness Report from 2012 through this country ladder, and the best worst life ever. Mexico is ranked 24 in 154 countries. Now, if we consider ranking through life satisfaction as Gallup measures it, Mexico is ranked 17 in 129 countries. Now, if it is ranked in terms of level of life satisfaction as the National Survey of Value, Mexico is number 4 out of 99 countries. So if it is done through affection and from the emotional load, Mexico is also very well ranked. It is ranked 18th in 156 countries. In the World Happiness Report 2013, there's another ranking with more updated data. Mexico is ranked 16 in 119 countries. In the World Data Happiness, they calculate an average from 2009 2010. Mexico is ranked 5th in 149 countries. So, what's behind these levels of happiness? What lays behind? In Mexico, we endeavored ourselves to find out what's behind happiness levels. So we applied the survey. I think it's the biggest in Mexico on subjective well-being and the variables explaining it. And I will tell you what this is about very briefly. We measured subjective well-being in 100 municipalities in Mexico, more than 26,000 questioners. The criteria to choose these municipalities were where capitals of the states are located, plus the two biggest municipalities. This gave us 93 municipalities plus the 7 biggest delegations within Mexico City. This provided us with 100 places that we equaled as municipalities, so we ranked 100 municipalities. Some statistical data, there were like 400 or 200 or 300 informants according to each municipality's variables that were measured. I will tell you now. First, we measure life satisfaction. That is measured everywhere, or what is mostly measured and from world ranks are obtained. But we also measure variables that explain happiness. Happiness components, we name them, and they relate to loads that we have talked about. The affective and cognitive loads. From one side, we have life assessment. Some questions express the degree at which people consider their lives on the right path. Satisfaction in terms of life dominions, health, occupation, economy, family, leisure time, religiousness, and surroundings. And also we measure 5 positive, 5 negative. We measure the frequency by which each emotion is expressed at each municipality. And then we measured all other variables that are more intrinsic to individuals, but they impact their subjective well-being. So on one hand, we have satisfaction to services provided by municipalities or delegations in Mexico City. There were 6 gathering garbage, public lining, parks and green areas, security, and cultural offering. So we measured services with this. We have some socioeconomic factors, and we have availability of time. How much time people have to get along with their families or friends and to relax and leisure, as well as human relations. Human relations has proved to be one of the variables or set of variables that most impact societies. And this was measured, we can say, through 2 variables: economic support and moral support that people get. And this is a question we made. This was contained in the survey. I have it here in English for those English speakers here present. And I would like to take a while about and explain that at Imagina Mexico, we like to take response scales with category references. This helps us entering or capturing the information more than simple numbers or numeric scales. We do think that people reflect more or think more in terms of ideas and words and not so much numbers. The next one, and this is the population distribution according to each category referent, and this matches with many things we have heard here about well-being in Mexico. And practically 3/4 of Mexican population are between somehow satisfied or very satisfied. I will not give you so many social demographic data, but I want to present to you here a satisfaction of life satisfaction by women and men. If we see truly, this is very little differences, but practically it was the same for us. Life satisfaction same for men and women, 5.2 and 5.3 here in this scale, and this difference is not statistically significant. The next one, please. So now I'm going to talk about variables that explain subjective well-being. So here we have the average of life satisfaction with each municipality or each of the 8 domains we measured, and this matches with has been presented. Satisfaction with a family dominion is the highest, 5.7 in the scale from 1 to 7. Spiritual life, and in this case it doesn't have to do with religion. It is about how satisfied people are in terms of spirituality, no matter what religion they have or if they don't have any religions. And then we have health with 5.26, and employment, a friendship, surrounding or environment, and then free time at the end. This is the average degree for this 100 municipalities. But this is the impact degree. The size of the icon refers or tells us about the degree of impact when generating happiness. Health is the highest one. How satisfied a person is about health, this is the item that most impacts happiness in Mexico. Then family dominion. Family includes 4 variables: how satisfied the person is with the partner, with the parents, with the children, with relatives. And economy, how satisfied people are with their economy, income, and household conditions, work, environment, spiritual life, friendship, and leisure time. And this comes from a regression that has a statistical difference. I didn't set it here, it seems to me, but well, it does come here. We can see the coefficients. They are clearly significant from the statistical point of view. This is the way affectionate states were measured. We tell them, if you think about yesterday, could you tell me if you frequently sensed these feelings or emotions? We have 5 positive emotions, 5 negative emotions, and it is contained in English as well. Next one. Somebody yesterday was telling us, it seems to me it was Esteban who told us about one specific thing when ranks are made or given. Oftentimes the differences in happiness or satisfaction of life among countries that are very similar is not statistical different. And this is important. What we did was basing our analysis in two groups of municipalities, those with higher levels of happiness and those with less happiness levels. The first municipality, the one ranked first, we calculated difference of happiness levels with the other municipalities that didn't present significant differences. By this, we formed the group of high happiness, and we did the same for those with the lowest happiness. We took first the least happy, and then we calculated those with no significant differences, and they are the group with low happiness level. And from these, we were able to make an analysis for our book. The previous one, please. No, the previous, no. Next. So, as we can see over here, the green bars are always higher than the red ones. And this tells us that the percentage of people experimenting positive emotions is larger in those municipalities that have declared to have larger or better subjective well-being compared to the other ones. If we analyze the opposite, and the opposite has to appear, and it does happen, except safe from sadness. The rest of the emotions, the percentage of people who experience this feeling is higher in those people with lower levels of happiness. So this clearly sets that well-being has an affective load. This is what I told a while ago, and negative emotions contribute to the unhappiness of people. And this is an interesting piece of information. We found it as well from this analysis. We took the satisfaction level compared to health, and the health of all those people who presented at least one of the positive affections compared to those that didn't present any positive affection, any positive emotion. And it is very clear that those people that didn't present any positive emotion present levels of satisfaction in terms of health lower than those compared to those people who express emotions positively. So for this, we calculated positive effects on emotions, positive emotions that are experienced by a person in regards to the positive emotions that are included. This is what we get to see here. In the case of people that didn't present negative affections with ranked 0, this index goes from 0 to 1 only. So those people who didn't present negative affections, they also presented higher satisfaction in terms of health in every case for every negative emotion. So now we get to public services. This is the level of satisfaction for public services, and it is worth noting that satisfaction level with public services is less than that with levels of life. Mexicans declare to be less satisfied with public services. That's what I mean, or utilities. And also here we have more municipality utilities and services and pride about the municipality. Support relations. This impact happiness when we compare the happiest municipalities with those less happy. Those happier have better support relations or warmer human relations compared to the least happy. Availability of time, and once again, municipalities that have declared or where people declare higher levels of well-being are those where people have more available time to get along with their families and friends and to leisure. And this was from the cognitive part of life, but they also hit on the emotional side. Negative affections or negative affections index or time availability also affect the index of negative affections and positively positive affections. In the long run, Mexicans are able to experience more positive affections and relations and less negative. In terms of income, we have household income and per capita income. For both, the happiest municipalities are those with higher level of income and higher per capita income. And this is a very interesting chart that also matches with that Alberto presented a while ago. We found, at least from complete junior high school, the higher level of education, the better happiness, the more happiness of people, but also satisfaction with their marital life. They have expressed how satisfied they are with their partners. Those with higher education present more levels of happiness, and the explanation comes here. Larger education produces happier societies because it's easy to address problems, to understand the world, and to acquire capacities to live better, and also to have better paid work. So we analyzed the effect of income, and this is what we got. Education impacts happiness by itself and also impacts the married life. And in terms of safety and security, the National Council for Security has ranked the most violent cities. In 2012, there were 4 cities in Mexico as the most violent, among the 10 most violent in the world: Ciudad Juárez, Chihuahua, Mazatlán, and Culiacán. And these 4 cities are the ones that present less positive affection within this ranking. Here we have positive affections, and also, or affects, and also the standard deviation underneath the average. Ciudad Juárez is very much underneath with 4.6 standard deviation, the same as Culiacán, Mazatlán, and Chihuahua. So it is true that security impacts the life of Mexicans. And this is victimization as well. We saw all people who are victims of some crime or felony. Those who have never been victims to any crime present to be expressed to be happier. And this is about people feeling confident to go out at night around where they live, to walk out. Those who have the confidence to do so seem to be happier, expressed to be happier. And this is the only open question our survey has. We asked people to define happiness with one single word. That if you had to define happiness with one single word, what that would be? Family is number one. 25% of Mexicans express happiness with family. Then love and some others. Money is the one previous to the last. Not even 2% of population define happiness by money. 177 words were mentioned to express happiness. And these are the 10 happiest municipalities and the 10 least happy, and some cities. And here we can see that among the 10 happiest municipalities, there are 3 Mexico City's delegations, and 3 municipalities in Michoacán are included in the least happy cities. Large cities: Guadalajara is ranked 69, Monterrey 55, Puebla 74. It calls the attention that Cancun is among the least happy, ranked 96. But one thing is interviewing people who live in Cancun, and another thing is interviewing tourists to Cancun. And the same happens at Acapulco. That's all. Thank you.
Muy bien, muchas gracias, Iván. Bueno, pues nos sorprende ver que Guadalajara está en el lugar 69 de 100, ¿verdad? En el ranking. 68 de 100. Creo que tenemos ahí mucho trabajo que hacer para tratar de ser más felices aquí en la ciudad. Bueno, y nos confirma lo que hemos estado viendo en la mesa. Este estudio nos dice que las personas valoran más la salud, la familia y su percepción económica, ¿no? Y me sorprende ver que le dan un valor menor al tiempo libre, ya que van a hacer con su tiempo, ¿no? Bueno.